Today's experience was sent to us by a sister who was once a Muslim, but had now repented and received Jesus Christ as her Lord and Savior. She saw her once Imam in hell, and he gave her shocking truth concerning Islam that caused her to amend her ways and faith. Kindly stay to the end to understand her experience. I was born into a devout Muslim family, where faith was more than just a belief. It was a way of life. From a young age, I was taught to pray, fast, and follow the principles of Islam. I admired the dedication of my parents and elders, who lived out their faith with sincerity. Yet, deep inside, I carried questions that I dared not voice. I often wondered about my purpose, about God's closeness, and whether my prayers were truly heard. As I grew older, my questions deepened. I loved God, but I felt distant from Him, as though He was too great to be known personally. I prayed, fasted, and did everything I was taught, yet there was always a lingering uncertainty in my heart. I struggled with the idea of assurance. How could I be sure my good deeds would outweigh my sins? Every time I thought I had done enough, a new doubt would rise. I longed for certainty, for a sense of closeness to God, but no matter how much I sought answers, they always seemed just out of reach. The more I tried to convince myself that I was on the right path, the more I felt a quiet longing for something beyond what I had known. In my late teens, I had brief encounters with Christians. At first, I didn't think much of it, but there was something about them that I couldn't ignore. Their faith intrigued me. They spoke about Jesus in a way I had never heard before. Not just as a prophet, but as someone alive, someone they had a relationship with. This puzzled me. How could they speak of God so intimately? How could they be so sure of their faith? I had always known God to be mighty and distant, someone I had to strive to please. Yet they spoke of Him as if He was close, as if they had a personal connection with Him. At first, I dismissed it as their belief different from mine. But deep down, their certainty left me wondering. What if there was something I was missing? What if God could be known personally? For as long as I could remember, I had feared what would happen to me after death. I had been taught that every action was being recorded, and on the day of judgment, my good deeds and bad deeds would be weighed. But no matter how much I tried to be good, I could never be sure if it was enough. There was always a lingering fear. What if I failed? What if I made a mistake and it cost me everything? The thought of facing eternity without certainty left me restless. That night, as I lay down to sleep, I had no idea that my life was about to change forever. I found myself in a place unlike any I had ever seen. It was vast, endless, and filled with a golden light that seemed to shine from everywhere. It was not like the sun or the stars, but something purer, something alive. I felt no fear, only a quiet peace that settled deep inside me. Then, from within the light, a figure appeared. He stepped forward, and at that moment my entire being seemed to recognize him, even though I did not understand how. His presence was overwhelming, not in a way that made me afraid, but in a way that made my heart race with something I had never felt before. It was like standing before someone I had always longed to meet, even though I had never known it until now. Then he called my name. His voice was unlike any voice I had heard before. It was gentle yet powerful, strong yet filled with love. It was as if, in that moment, he was speaking to the deepest part of me. I wanted to speak, to ask who he was, but before I could, it was as if my questions were already known. Without words, he began to reveal to me the answers to the things I had struggled with for years. He revealed to me that salvation was not something I had to earn. It was something he had already given. It was not based on my efforts, but on what he had done. He had paid the price in full, and because of that, I could receive salvation as a gift. I no longer had to live in fear of whether I was good enough. His sacrifice was enough. Through him, I could finally have peace, knowing that I was secure in his hands. I had always believed that God was powerful and mighty, but I had never been sure if he truly loved me personally. I had seen him as a great ruler to be obeyed and feared, but never as a father who cared deeply for me. I wondered, How could someone so great concern himself with someone as small as me? Was I just another creation among millions? Or did he see me individually? He revealed to me that his love was not distant or based on my performance. It was real, deep, and eternal. He had loved me long before I even thought of him. His love was not something I had to earn or strive for. It was freely given. He showed me that he had been reaching out to me all my life, waiting for me to see the truth. I was not just one among many. I was seen, known, and loved personally. I carried the weight of my mistakes for years. No matter how much I repented, I feared that it might not be enough. I worried that my past would always follow me, that I could never be truly clean. I tried to do better, but I still felt burdened by guilt. I asked myself, how could I be sure that my sins were truly forgiven? He revealed to me that true forgiveness was not about how much I could do to erase my sins, but about what he had already done for me. He had taken my burdens upon himself so that I could be free. My sins, which I thought were too heavy to be forgiven, had already been washed away by his sacrifice. He had paid the price in full. I no longer had to strive to earn forgiveness. It had already been given. I had been told that there were many paths to God, many ways to reach him. I had heard different teachings about what was required, and I had followed them the best I could. But deep down, I always wondered, which one was the right way? How could I be sure? He revealed to me that he was the way, the truth, and the life. It was not about following a set of rules or traditions, but about knowing him. Through him, I could truly know God, not just as a distant ruler, but as my Father. He was not asking me to follow a list of steps to reach him. Instead, he had already come to me, showing me the way himself. As these truths filled my heart, the light around me grew even brighter. I felt warmth, peace, and a love that I could not describe. It was as if the longing I had carried my whole life had finally been answered. The questions that had kept me awake at night were no longer questions. I had found the truth. As I stood with Jesus, I felt safe. His presence filled me with love and peace, and I wished I could stay with him forever. But suddenly, everything changed. The light around me disappeared, and I was surrounded by thick darkness. The air became heavy and hot, making it hard to breathe. Fear crept into my heart. I did not understand what was happening. Just moments ago, I had been with Jesus, but now I was somewhere else, somewhere terrifying. Then, in the distance, I saw a dim glow. At first, I thought it was light, but as I got closer, I realized it was fire. The flames rose high, but they were strange. They burned without destroying anything. Instead of giving warmth, they brought pain and suffering. Suddenly, I heard terrible screams. It was not just one voice, but many men, women, even young people crying out in pain. The sound sent shivers through my whole body. I wanted to cover my ears, but the cries grew louder. As I stood frozen, unable to comprehend where I was, I saw figures moving in the shadows. People, countless people, were trapped, their faces twisted in anguish. Some called out for help, others wept, and some screamed in regret. It was a place of suffering, a place where hope had been lost. Then, through the thick air, I heard a voice calling my name. I turned and saw a face I recognized immediately, my former Imam. He had been a respected leader, a man of knowledge, someone I had once looked up to. But now he was not the same. His eyes were filled with terror, his hands stretched out in desperation. He pleaded, his voice shaking with sorrow, begging for another chance. He cried out that he had been wrong, that he had refused to accept the truth when it was before him. He had rejected Jesus, and now he understood, but it was too late. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. His cries pierced my heart. He had spent his life teaching others, guiding them, yet now he was the one begging for mercy. But there was none to be given. I felt a force pulling me away, lifting me from the scene. As I rose, his cries grew fainter until they were gone. I gasped, my eyes opening suddenly, and I found myself back in my room. My body was drenched in sweat, my hands shaking. It had felt too real to be just a dream. Tears filled my eyes as I realized the truth. Then I saw them. Faces appeared through the flames, twisted in pain. Their hands stretched out, but not to attack me, to beg for help. Their eyes were filled with sorrow and regret. I recognized some of them. These were people who had lived and died believing they did not need Jesus. They had thought their good deeds were enough. Now they were weeping, saying they had been wrong. Suddenly, a voice filled the air. It was strong but full of sadness. It was Jesus. He revealed to me that he had not brought me here to scare me, but to show me the truth. Salvation was a free gift, but it had to be accepted in this life. After death, there were no second chances. I fell to my knees, shaking. I had never truly understood eternity until that moment. I had spent my life questioning and searching, but now I had seen the truth. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the scene changed. The fire, the screams, the suffering, it all faded away. I found myself back in my room, gasping for air. My body was drenched in sweat, and my hands were trembling. I cannot keep this to myself. I must warn my brothers and sisters in Christ. We have been given the truth, and with that truth comes a duty. Jesus did not save us so we could sit comfortably while others perish in ignorance. He commanded us to go and make disciples, to share his love and his salvation with those who do not yet know him. How many people do I pass by every day who are searching, just as I was? How many are asking the same questions, longing for assurance, for love, for forgiveness, and for the way to God? And yet, how often do I hesitate to speak, fearing rejection or discomfort? I cannot afford to stay silent. I have seen the reality of what happens to those who die without Jesus, and it is not something I would wish upon anyone. If I truly love people, I must tell them the truth. Even if they reject me, even if they do not listen, I must plant the seed. I urge every believer, do not take this lightly. The time is short. There are no second chances after death. We must speak now while there is still time. Let us not be ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to all who believe. I pray that God gives us the courage to speak boldly, the wisdom to share his message with love, and the urgency to act before it is too late. Because one day, when we stand before him, I want to hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant." And I want to know that I did everything I could to lead others to the truth. All right, friends, this brings us to the end of today's experience. Kindly like and share this video with your friends and families. Kindly subscribe to our channel and turn on your notification bell icon to be the first to get updated anytime we upload a new experience sent to us. Remain blessed.